Good afternoon, and welcome to Why Am I Not Losing Weight? 3 keys to release the weight, lose the weight, and enhance your waist. So, you are in for a treat today. You will actually learn more than 3 keys, or you will be enlightened to enhance your weight challenges. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. I do have each of you muted. If you have any questions or any thoughts that come up, please put them in the chat. And then once I finish the slideshow, I will look at those and respond accordingly. So I want you to have your thoughts on paper so that you are able to remember as we go along. And I just trust that you will enjoy this and acquire some information that is helpful to you. So, why am I not losing weight? 3 keys to release the weight, lose the weight, and enhance your waist. And so, as we, of course, we have this little challenge here. Let's just go backwards. That's what happens when you're reviewing your presentation. So, the ultimate goal for this session is to create awareness of why you may not be losing weight. There are probably some things that I will share that are not on the slides. What I will do if that occurs is to make out a little note sheet so that I can forward it to you for spending part of your day with me. But our ultimate goal is to create awareness of why you may not be losing weight. So, just a disclaimer, I'm a non-medical educator of holistic health. I do not diagnose, treat, or prescribe. I do not take the place of the relationship with your medical practitioner. What I do is educate you with information to empower you to make informed decisions so that you are able to execute the information that you understand. I am all about helping you to understand. So as we begin our session today, you may have thought of some things in preparation for being in this session today that you've been told about weight. You may have been told eat less, or you eat too much, so eat less. Exercise more, you'll lose weight. Avoid fat and eat more whole grains. You may have been told exercise this way. Don't do that exercise. You may have been told to go to bed at this time, not that time. So I want you, as we go along, if you're able to type into the chat some of the things that you may have been told as to why you are not losing weight. And I will tell you, as it says on the screen, the first two are dead wrong. But the third one contains 2 lies that are killing America. You don't want to avoid fat and you don't want to eat more grains. So we will talk about nutrition as a whole. So type into the chat any thing that you have been told as to why you are not losing weight. And even particularly with females, they have been told that it's just because it's your age. It's something that's gonna happen. So type that in there as well. Okay, let's move on. So what if you've done all of these things and you still just can't get rid of the weight? The weight won't leave you. I am here to tell you that you're not alone. But I am here to ask you, are you ready to learn some solutions and real answers to help you move forward with your overall health? I trust that the answer is yes. So let's see. Why? So the reason I have that why up here is, why am I doing this? If any of you know me or have seen me, I'm a petite individual. And so you may be asking, what validates you to talk to me about losing weight? Well, that is such a great question, and I am so glad that you asked that. You will find as we go along that weight, I don't look at weight as just the pounds that you have, and you will come to an understanding that weight, WEIGHT, is more than the pounds. Weight is actually waste that our body is not releasing. It is actually waste, WASTE, that our body is not releasing. And for females, many times it shows up in the waist, the WAIST. So I want you to remember that I am here. I have had challenges with weight because of waste. And so even for me, even me being petite, my challenges can be 2 pounds more than my normal weight that actually affects me and my well-being. So I also want to share with you my story and my journey briefly as to how I arrived into this place of being in this health arena of preventive health. And my journey is such that when I was born as an infant, long story short, 8 months, I was diagnosed or labeled to have eczema dermatitis. And I was told by my parents that they were told that I would grow out of it. But that wasn't the case for me. It followed me. Now, many people don't know that there is atopic dermatitis and there's contact dermatitis. Atopic dermatitis is more of a chronic issue, which is what my body expressed. But chronic dermatitis is dermatitis that people have because they come in contact with something that their body is sensitive to. So I was expressing both, but more so the atopic dermatitis that was chronic. So again, it followed me through my adulthood. And through my journey, I learned when I got old enough and was able to, when I was able to do things on my own and start my own journey, I began to investigate, and I did these 5 things here to get some resolution from the outbreaks of eczema. So I did the 5 R's. I roamed, I researched, I started to remove, I started to repair, and I did a reset. And that's how I was able to get resolution. And why am I sharing that with you? That is another great question. It is simply because I know now that many of the steps that I took in having the resolution of the eczema dermatitis, they are very helpful with whatever chronic issue or even with weight that may be expressed through various individuals. So now I want you to take a look at this picture on here, and it has insulin resistance on it, and we're ultimately going to mention hormones. If you've been listening to any of the Facebook lives, I have talked about how hormones actually play a role in our weight and our overall health. So if you look at this, you may find that you have experienced some of the things that are listed on here, and they may be factoring into your inability to release those last few pounds or being stuck where you are. So, and you can actually see in there inability to lose weight. So we'll talk about insulin resistance more in a little bit, but these things here, remember, the whole goal is to help you be aware of things that may be positioning you not to release the weight that you have and that you so desire to release. Okay, let's move on. So during this session, we're going to talk about how to activate your body's built-in metabolic system. We're also going to talk about 3 keys to release the weight, lose the weight, and enhance your weight. And we are going to also talk about reclaiming your life. And if you think about it, as you are able to have an understanding and you're able to put things into practice, then you are able to actually start to reclaim your life. I believe when you understand things, you are able to put them in practice. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And we have other persons coming in. So welcome to our session here. Okay. So I want to begin our talk by discussing weight loss and using the three-legged stool to actually get you to understand a little bit about where I'm coming from with this information. So what we will be doing is talking about cellular inflammation and how it turns on negative gene expression. And so stressors drive inflammation and hidden infection, and it can also lead to leaky gut. And so when that happens, you can have anything expressed in your body. And we're talking about weight loss resistance. So whenever we're talking about weight loss resistance and the three-legged stool, what we have to realize is that there are things. Let me back up here for a minute. I skipped a whole little thing. Okay, so when we have this weight loss and this three-legged stool analogy, you see a stool has three legs, usually at least three legs. And if you have a stool that doesn't have all three legs, would you sit on it? And if you did sit on it with two legs, would you actually be able to tolerate that stool? Would you actually be able to stay on it without falling on the floor? So when you think of a stool, you want to make sure that you have all the legs and have them all sturdy. Now, another thing about thinking about a stool, because it's happened to me before, is sitting on a three-legged stool because all of the legs look well, but they're really not. One of them's broken, one of them's weak, one of them's defective, and you end up in the floor. And that's not a good feeling. So when we're talking about weight loss resistance and comparing it to a three-legged stool, we have to factor in what may be impacting our weight and our weight loss resistance. So it could be a genetic issue. It could be a stress issue. It could be a leaky gut issue. And when we talk about genetics, when you look at genetics and what's in your genes, I want you to know that just because someone in your family expressed a disease label does not mean that you have to. I hear a feedback. Do y'all hear feedback? If you do, type it into the chat. Let me just stop that. Okay. Maybe it's just me. So, and then when it comes to stress, there are so many things that can stress us. And we're going to look at some of those things, and then we're going to come back to this three-legged stool and these how it impacts our gut. So you must change the expression of the genes, and you can do that with lifestyle choices. Remove the stressors and repair the gut. It's going to be key to weight loss resistance. So I want to talk a little bit about the endocrine system because usually when I do talks, most of the time it's females. Occasionally I'll have some males, but most of the time it's females. And I want you to be well aware of the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is a system that is comprised of many glands. And this is an oversimplified picture of our endocrine system. But basically, you have these glands. You have the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the thyroid, the pancreas, the adrenals, ovaries, and testes. These are some of the glands, and they communicate with one another. And you're going to see here momentarily how when the communication gets interrupted, anything can go awry. Anything can go awry, and that's when our challenges come. And I've just noticed that in the chat, we asked earlier to list some of the things that you've been told as to why you are not able to release weight. And one of them is that your metabolism is slowed down. That is a common thing that people are told, is their metabolism has slowed down. So endocrine system. And so whenever we think of the endocrine system, I want you to think of messengers. Messengers. The endocrine system communicates with each other, those organs do, and they help us to move, to respire, to acknowledge our senses, to grow, to reproduce, to excrete nutrition, process those things, whatever stage and phase of life that we are in. So I want to talk about this little diagram here, and this is called the HPAT axis, and that stands for the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, and thyroid glands. So those glands communicate. And as I forestated, if the communication gets interrupted, then anything can occur. So here you can have, remember earlier we talked about stress and how it impacts. That's one of the three legs of the stool, your genetics, the stress, and it can lead to leaky gut. So with this HPAT axis, whether it is an acute stress or a perceived threat, when that event occurs, the little place in your brain that is beneath the hypothalamus called the amygdala signals the hypothalamus to signal the other glands within the system to actually either secrete more or secrete less of the designated hormones. So you have all of these messages going out. And so if there is an acute stress or perceived threat, then your autonomic nervous system is going to trigger your adrenal cortex. Right here in this middle part here is your adrenal cortex. It's going to trigger that adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol. Now, cortisol is the deemed stress hormone. So anytime there's this acute stress or perceived threat, your cortisol is going to be secreted. When your cortisol is secreted, it's going to impact your other systems. Now, as you can see on here, it can impact your fight or flight, your adrenaline. You decide if you're going to stay, if you're going to run. And when you're in this stressful perceived threat event, that cortisol is going to dampen your digestion. It's going to dampen your immune system because 80% of your immune system is in your gastrointestinal tract. And then it's going to affect your cardiovascular respiratory. You may have an increased heart rate. You may start to hyperventilate. When all of this is going on, it can trigger these things that are called cytokines, histamines that can predispose you to have inflammation expressed. And all of this, all the while, is affecting your thyroid. So whenever that happens, and I skipped the pituitary, so it's your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your adrenals, and your thyroid. Whenever this stress or perceived threat arrives, it's going to cause that cortisol, that stress hormone, to be activated and impact the other systems and organs within the system, and it's going to predispose your body to act awry and in a chronic state. You can express mental and emotional stress, like I said, the digestive stress. If you're eating or if you've just eaten, you're not going to digest your food well. So all of these things impact our weight because they affect our hormones, because these messages are sent out of balance. I hope that makes sense. So the other thing when we talk about stress is we're female. We wear a lot of hats. We do a lot of things. We're daughter, we're sister, we're mom, we're aunt, we're grandma, we're a professional, we're a detective. We are even in the role of acting as a health person when something happens with one of your children, or you're a caretaker when you're taking care of parents or other family members. So we're juggling all of these hats, but really our brains aren't designed to multitask. And so when we are multitasking, when we're taking care of everyone else, really not giving self-care to ourselves, we're causing these messengers to go awry in our bodies, and we're not allowing it to actually function the way it should and to get rid of waste. Remember that weight, as I stated earlier, the weight, the pounds, the extra inches that you see and feel it is not your fault because it is the body not able to function properly because of some designated stressors that is not allowing our organs of elimination to rid themselves of the waste. So we wear many hats. So stress, when it is in unfavorable conditions, like I said, it can be mental, it can be mechanical. The mechanical can be that you have an injury to your body, to your structure, to your bones, to your back, your knee, your elbow, your shoulder, whatever. And that can lead to some emotional stress. It may impact your financial stress because you may not be able to work. We have all these stressors from the environment. We can have stressors from the foods that we eat. And we can actually have the single nucleotide polymorphisms, the genetic expressions that are not positive expressions. All of these things are stressors. And so when all of these stressors come about, then our our endocrine system that I just showed you with the happy animal on it, it goes awry, and the body can be presenting any of these things on here. We can have trouble or challenges with our reproductive systems, our kidneys. And if you will notice on here, it has estrogen. I'm going to talk about estrogen here in a little bit. Estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, even when it comes to males, or even females as well. So these hormones. So whenever we have these stressors, we're positioned to express inflammation. And why? See, we could call this the bucket theory. When we are born, I believe that we all come here with some level of toxicity. Even though our mothers did their best to care for us and to nourish us while we were being incubated, along the way, the stressors that they experienced were probably passed on to us. And usually most of us as females have more of the traits of our mothers than of our fathers, simply because they incubated us. But there is a part that the father's genetics plays as well. But we have this bucket, and our bucket can have some stressors in there, and we can be fine. But over time, as we grow, as we mature, as we have events and experience in our lives, our buckets can get full, and they cannot get rid of the waste along the way. So it gets full and it just spills out. You could actually, when we were younger, we could tolerate certain foods better then than maybe now. We could tolerate a certain exercises better then than now, and some we may not even be able to do now. You could tolerate having a lot of children around you previously, whereas to now you can't. You could think better previously, and maybe now you can't. Your metabolism seemed to be functioning more optimally then, but now it doesn't appear. So hence they say your metabolism is the reason that you're not able to release the weight. But think of it as a bucket. We have all of these encounters, all of these hats, and it just gets to a moment at some point where you're like, I can't take it anymore. And when you're physically, literally saying, I can't take it anymore, guess what? Your body is saying the same thing. And the thing about it, we're talking about inflammation. And most of the time when people hear the word inflammation, they're thinking about joint inflammation, arthritis, bursitis, tendonitis, any of those itises, hepatitis, whatever. But I want you to think of this inflammation deeper than that. So any of these things can take place when our bucket overflows, and it can just happen at any moment. So let's talk about this cell, and we'll spend some time here for a few moments. Now remember, we had the HPAT axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, thyroid connection. And we talked about how the acute stress or the perceived threat can throw us into a spiral of stress. It can signal the anterior pituitary will signal the adrenal cortex. The cortex will secrete cortisol to help us to get through the stress. But if we stay in a stressful state too long, it becomes chronic stress. And that stress is internal. It may have been expressed as external, but now it's internal. And when all of those things are evident and presenting themselves, it's happening at the cellular level. So when we're talking about inflammation, we're talking beyond joints. We're talking beyond your gastrointestinal inflammation, your gastritis or your colitis. We're talking about at the very makeup of our beings, the cell. The cell. So I want you to remember that our ultimate goal is to get an understanding of why you may not be releasing weight. And so on a cellular level, you have to realize, or I will share with you if you're unaware, that our cells are made up of 2 layers of fat around it. 2 layers of fat, and it's not really showing it on here, but it's 2 layers of fat. And those layers of fat are cushions, and those layers of fat are there because they house receptors. And these receptors are like doors, is what I like to call them, that allow nutrients to go into the cell to be processed as energy, and then they are able to be opened again to release the weight. The waste, I said weight, but it's waste. Remember, I said that weight is actually waste that's not being released from your cells on a cellular level. And so when that inflammation is occurring to your cellular membrane because the fatty membrane is not nourished, or you have these stressors, this leaky gut, you have unhealthy fats, that is impacted, and those doors, those receptors do not work well. It's like a door, an actual door that needs to be oiled. It needs the hinges to be oiled so that it can open and close without creaking, so that you are able to open it wide enough to get things through it that need to go through it, whether that be in or out. So it allows cellular fluidity. And so when we have toxins circulating from the outside that get in the inside of us and they don't get released, then it causes us to hold on to waste. And many times that waste is held in our abdominal region. And when that is held in our abdominal region, it is actually impacting our cardiovascular function. It is actually impacting how our intestinal tract releases waste. And so if you think about your abdomen, you have your vital organs there. Your gastrointestinal system is there. You have your liver, your spleen, your kidneys, your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestines. So you have all of those organs in there, your pancreas, your gallbladder, your liver. And so when we think of inflammation, I want you to think of it on the cellular level, not just a joint, not just an organ, but a cellular level. And if there's cellular inflammation, and I like to call it the silent killer, because inflammation can be going on inside of you. You can have a fire going on inside of you and not even realize it. So we have in our actual homes, we have smoke detectors, fire alarms. And so if something is not smelling right, something is too hot, it will actually go off and alarm us. Hey, something's in the house that's not right. And that is actually happening in our bodies, but sometimes we don't give it attention. So whenever our body starts to express various symptoms, I believe it is a signal. It is our smoke alarm, our carbon dioxide detector, letting us know that something is out of balance. There's some inflammation somewhere. And if there's inflammation, there's probably going to be some infections, and those infections can be hidden. And that's where you get into the itises. And so at the cellular level is what I want you to remember. So, what are some causes of cellular inflammation? I've actually mentioned them as I was talking, but there are some food matters, there's environmental matter, and there's even mindset matters. Do you not know that your mindset can impact your outlook? It can impact your body's expressions. Your mindset can lead you to hold on to things or to release things. So those are some causes literally of cellular inflammation. And so I just wanted to be able to just revisit waste. Remember, we're talking about enhancing our bodies so that we can release weight, W-E-I-G-H-T, but being made aware that the weight, usually when you get to a stuck place, is because of waste. Waste, W-A-S-T-E, that affects your waist, W-A-I-S-T, where a lot of weight is held. Now, some people do hold weight in their thighs, and just as an aside, we do have insulin receptors in our thighs. So one of the things to do is to make sure that you're moving well to help that get that out of your system. So these are just stressors. Stressors can be environmental. They can be the things that you put on your body. They can be the things that are put on your lawn. Yes, I like to have a beautiful lawn, and I know others do as well, but the chemicals are not helpful. The things that are sprayed to help our lawn to look beautiful. And I want you to think about everything that this body encounters, whether it be from a food or the environment, whether it be a mental, chemical thing, it has to go through our liver to be detoxified so that it can be broken down from, let's say, a fat soluble to a water soluble, so it can be excreted out of the body through the kidneys or our skin. So toxic waste. So what's the answer to why am I not losing weight? Why can I get rid of this weight? Well, the truth is, it's not really your fault. It really has to do, it boils down to hormones. And so in order to really learn and to begin to lose weight, you have to understand hormones. So I want to talk a little bit about something called the Krebs cycle, and then we'll talk about some hormones. And I don't know that I have a slide on here about the hormones, but so I want to talk about this Krebs cycle. And this actually goes along with that HPAT axis and my mentioning the liver having such a great impact with our ability to release weight. Now, the Krebs cycle, the reason I'm mentioning this is because we just talked about cells and cellular inflammation. And I want you to think of a cell, if it's not able to function properly, if the cell membrane, that is 2 layers of fat, that is necessary for us to have in order for the receptors to be housed on them, to be able to let things in and out of the cell appropriately. If that is not, if that is not, I can't even, if the cell membrane is damaged, then it's going to affect our energy level. And your energy level is also going to impact how you are able to release weight. And so this Krebs cycle is our energy cycle. And we're going to talk about the liver here momentarily, but our liver is key with our hormone production. So even at the cellular level, the Krebs cycle, our energy, it helps with our amino acids, with our proteins, which are our proteins production, and then the cholesterol. So if we are deficient on that cell membrane, we're not able to get nutrients in, we're not able to get waste out, we can look at the cell as being constipated. We can all attest to that we have at one time or another in our lives being constipated. And if you're constipated, you know you don't feel good. So if you don't feel good, think about how your cells feel. And remember, if it's one cell, it's usually not just one cell, it's usually more than one cell. So your energy is dampened. So we want to think about the HPAT axis, those stressors that can take place, that cortisol that is secreted, how our energy is drained, how our body is not able to get rid of the waste when we stay in the state of chronic stress, and we're holding on to waste, and that waste is usually housed in fat. The fat that we can't release because we don't have the energy. So what is the solution? Well, we got to get to the cause. We got to see what is the issue with the stool. Which leg on the stool is your greatest need of service? Whether that be a genetic expression, a stress, whether that be the stress be a mental, emotional, environmental, nutritional, or again, the actual genetic SNP, it's going to affect your gut. So we have to figure out what is driving our bodies to be in such a state of stress that it is holding on to the waste. And once we determine what that is, then we have to work to turn genes off so that we can release the stress and begin to repair our gut, because the immune system is in our gut, 80% in our immune system, and within our digestive gastrointestinal system, our liver is a part of that. So we really have to focus on the liver. So let's talk about the liver here for a few moments. The liver, it is the largest internal organ. Our skin is the largest external organ, and those are two of our eliminatory organs. The other is our kidneys, our that system. So that's how we get rid of waste, through our skin, through our kidneys, through our liver, and of course, as we breathe, we're breathing off waste. But the liver is the largest internal organ, and it's about the size of an American football, and that's because in other countries they call soccer a football. But it is about 3.5 pounds. And the liver, that little green thing underneath there, is a picture to give an example of the gallbladder. Now let's look at what the liver does. The liver performs over 500 vital functions. It filters waste products from the blood. It converts nutrients from our food into usable substances the body can use and store for later use. It produces proteins with the help of vitamin K that are important in blood clotting. It breaks down old or damaged blood cells, and it is a factory for cholesterol. Now, I want to stop there for a minute and go back to breaking down old or damaged blood cells and thinking about it, breaking down those old or damaged blood cells, but not being able to get rid of the waste. So think about that cell that I mentioned being constipated for whatever reason. Things are recirculating within our bodies because we can't get it out, because the cells are constipated. They can't get nutrients in properly, and they can't get waste out properly. So it's recirculating and housing itself in fat. The fat, and that fat, that cushion is usually around the waist. The WAIST is where it is usually harbored, and sometimes, again, like I said, within the thighs. So if the liver is not able to break down or damage, get rid of these damaged blood cells, then the liver can get backed up. It can get toxic. It can get stagnant. It can get constipated itself. And it is a factory for cholesterol. So if our liver is not able to manufacture cholesterol, then that impacts our hormones. So the liver also produces and stores bile to help emulsify fats and fat-soluble vitamins. And again, it helps to break down hormones. Now, I don't have a picture in here about it, but I want you to picture this. Picture cholesterol being at the top of the mountain, and underneath cholesterol you have your other hormones. So with the liver, as it is a factory for cholesterol, meaning that fat layer around your cells is necessary. And I want you to think back to that picture that had the lady with all the red things on there, the PCOS, the high blood pressure, the high cholesterol, the triglyceride, those things on there. And think about many times as women, things change in women's health, you may be asked to go on a statin, which is a anti-cholesterol medication. Now, again, I'm a non-medical doctor. I'm not here to take the place of your medical practitioner, but I want you to think about a statin. If it is anti-cholesterol, which is fat, which needs to surround your cells in order for those receptors to have good cushion and be housed there and to open and close appropriately so that nutrients can go in and waste can go out. I want you to think about, if the statins are getting rid of that, what that's doing to your receptors. Your receptors not able to function properly. So thinking about that cholesterol at the top of the mountain and your other hormones beneath it. If the cholesterol is not there in an appropriate amount, then you cannot produce your hormones correctly. And if you can't produce your hormones correctly, then you can't break them down correctly. And so hence, as women age, and it usually starts around 30 for most women, some women, depending on their genetic history or tendencies, it may start earlier, but around 30 years of age, it is true that our hormones start to change. We start to experience perimenopause. We start to experience different changes in what we are able to eat and how we're able to move as a generality. Now, some people it's different, but usually around 30, you're going to start to notice changes. 30, 40, those changes are taking place. And as those things are taking place, whereas menopause usually takes place anywhere between 50, 55 on the average for most women is when that happens. But between 30 and 55, there is a change in the hormones and in the hormone production. So whereas when you were younger in your 20s and your early 30s even, you had sufficient balance of your estrogen, your progesterone, and even your testosterone, your DHEA. It was a balance of those, and they worked for you. And so that's why you were able to eat and move and do the things that you were able to do. Whereas come 30 or 40 or whatever your number was or may be, then things started to change. You noticed that your movement was different, your food ability to tolerate certain foods were different, your ability to you may even started seeing shifts in your blood work. Your cholesterol may start to elevate, your triglycerides or even your blood sugar start to fluctuate. Your progesterone and your estrogen worked for you. Whereas when things start to decline, then that's when you may have noticed changes in your blood sugar. And to the point that you begin to express some insulin resistance. And so the liver it is necessary for the liver to manufacture cholesterol so that it can break down the hormones. And if that doesn't happen, then there is a problem with removing toxins and being able to release those waste, because the liver is very important in removing waste because they actually convert them into a less harmful state to be released out of the body. And the liver even converts excess glucose to glycogen for storage to use as backup fuel. So when you have that shift in your hormones that starts usually around age 30, then you start to notice these changes, or you may think about it now and say, hey, something did start changing around that time. Your cycle may have started to change, whereas it seemed to be fluid, easy going. It may start to be a heavier flow, maybe a longer cycle or a shorter cycle. Your body was saying, and I didn't know it either. Your body was saying, your hormones are shifting. So we need to adjust accordingly so that we can continue to be balanced in our health. So one of the things that when it comes to weight that I recommend when I'm working with people is to really support your liver. And because the liver has the gallbladder has what it does is to help emulsify fats, break down the fats, make them into more easily digestible components and ultimately water soluble so that they can actually be excreted from the body. So supporting your liver is very vital. And some of the things that I recommend is like lemons, because it helps thin the bile. In the mornings, I like to drink actually lime and not lemons, but drink some lime water. And you can do lemons if that's your choice. Beets, really the beet greens are helpful in getting toxins out of the body. And then if you so desire, herbal bitters are very helpful. You can have them just a few minutes before your meals. Some of your herbal bitters that you can put in your actual food, dandelion greens. There's bitter melon. You can get it as an actual whole food or some powder, Brussels sprouts, and green leafy vegetables. Excuse me one moment. Let me wet my throat. So we want to support the liver. And we want to support it with healthy fats. coconut oil, flaxseed oil, avocado oil, hemp seed oil is a generality. There are some situations where it is recommended to be mindful of flaxseed and flaxseed oil, particularly when you get into estrogen dominance expressions. And estrogen dominant expressions does tend to be more prevalent once you get into that perimenopause phase where your hormones start to decrease, where that estrogen and that progesterone is not so protective. So if you've ever thought about it, for women, heart disease, they are the estrogen and progesterone are protective before the hormones start to decline. Once the hormones start to decline, then you don't have that protective cardiovascular aspect from the hormones. And so that is one reason why many females begin to see their cholesterol numbers change, start to go up, and to look like they're having some challenges with their heart because the estrogen and progesterone are not in a level that they're so protective. So when that happens again, our bodies are not able to release waste as well as it used to. Another thing to support the liver is sunflower lecithin. It thins the bile and it supports the brain. Because another thing that happens when people are working to release weight after they've changed after you've changed the diet, you've modified your exercise, you're looking at your other stressors in life, but it may just be such a pull on your brain, your thought processes, your memory. So sunflower lecithin is something that helps with that. It thins the bile and it supports the brain. These are just some foods that are recommended to support the liver and to support it in its work to detoxify our bodies. And so we want to make sure that we support the liver, like I said, so that it can convert the cholesterol into our hormones, and so that we will be able to detoxify our body. That's a real simple explanation of it. So what do we do to restore harmony to our organs, to help that HPAT axis? Well, we got to manage our stress. And like I said, there's so many stressors. If you learn nothing else from today, or if you remember nothing else today, really sit and take some time to evaluate where your stressors are. And I even have a questionnaire that can help you determine what your greatest area of stress is. Now, you may be able to determine external stressors, but you may not be able to determine internal stressors. And your internal stressors sometimes and usually are more impactful than the external stressors because you may not be aware of it. So again, the ultimate goal is for you to be aware of why you may not be releasing weight. And both bottom line, it's hormones. It boils down to being able to balance those hormones. And as we age, again, I'm going back to the 30 when we're experiencing that starting being perimenopause. You may experience changes in your menses and how the flow is. And how all that takes place. We also have to remember that I lost my thoughts, so I'll come back to it. So that's one of those things of thinking about everything too much. You can't be multitasking, but we have to be aware that we have to support our liver. We have to do what is necessary so that it can convert these the cholesterol to the hormones. And if it's not, then it's going to pull weight on the kidneys. And I know what it was. Now, as we get into that perimenopause phase and our hormone levels begin to change, what happens is our adrenals now have to pick up the work because our ovaries are not able to produce the estrogen and progesterone like they used to because of those hormonal shifts. And that shift takes place. And if you think about going back to when we talked about those various stressors as just being a woman, and then getting into the stresses of the environment, the stressors, the mental stress, the nutritional stress, and that perceived threat or that acute stress is pulling on your adrenals, and you have those adrenals that sit on top of your kidneys. And when we are stressed, not only is the cortisol released, It also depletes of our B vitamins. B vitamins are water soluble, so it is necessary that we make sure that we incorporate B vitamins to support our adrenals, to support our liver. And if you want to go back to, I'm going to go back to that Krebs cycle for a moment, because I want you to see this cycle requires B vitamins. All these B's you see in here, it is necessary for our liver, for our kidneys, for our energy, for our actual mitochondria energy. We call them energy houses, powerhouses within our cells, but it is necessary for them to function well. If we don't have a sufficient amount of B vitamins with whatever the stressor is, our cells are going to be congested and or constipated, and we're not going to be able to release waste. We're not going to be able to have sufficient entrance of nutrients, and we're not going to be able to release waste. Remember that waste is not just in your gastrointestinal tract, it is at the cellular level. So ultimately, to get over the inability to release weight, we have to work at the cellular level, make sure that we repair that cellular membrane, that fatty layer, so that those receptors are able to be grounded enough, that they are oiled enough with the healthy fat so that they can open and close, allow nutrients in, and get waste out. So, let's see what else we have. Okay, so let me go back here where we were, and I'm about to wrap up because I know some of you were doing this during your lunchtime, but this is a very general conversation, and if it's something that you enjoy, we will do more of this and be more specific. But with nutritional support, we want to make sure that we include what's called adaptogens. Those are some herbs that actually help us to be calm, to relieve stress. Something like some ashwagandha is a common one that you may be aware of, or schizandra is another one, or even some chamomile is helpful. And like I said, the B vitamins, selenium and iodine, you want to support the thyroid. Remember that was in the HPAT axis. And then omega-3 fatty acids. We want to make sure that we have healthy fats and not the ones that are going to be hydrogenated or oxidized, that are going to impact our cellular membrane. We want to make sure that we have a good amount of omega-3 fatty acids, and you can get those from walnuts, flaxseed if you're able to tolerate those, hemp seed, chia seeds, and some other nuts that are available out there. So we have to restore harmony so that we can continue or begin the process again to release weight. And I did not mention, I don't think it's on here because that was my last slide. I did not mention insulin and glucose so much, but as our estrogen and progesterone balance changes as we go to perimenopause, going through that phase of going to menopause, and the estrogen and progesterone levels change. As they change, and our cortisol is being impacted because of the stressors, it affects our insulin and our glucose, and we are more predisposed to being insulin resistant. And being insulin resistant is because those receptors need to be nourished. We need to really manage what we're eating. We have to really be aware of the amount of starchy foods that we incorporate in our nutritional choices. So that is a little bit of why you may not be losing weight. Three keys are to make sure that you're including healthy fats, you're being aware of your stressors, and you're finding what your stressors are, and you are relieving toxins as much as you can. And if nothing else, support your liver. Support your liver because it's supporting your whole body. I'd like to think of the liver because it is the liver. It is living and it is helping us to live. So support your liver. So I hope this has been helpful, and I'm going to stop my slideshow right now to see if there's any questions. So let me stop my share, see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. If there's any questions, please, I will give you the opportunity to unmute yourself if you like and ask any questions. So you should have a note to unmute if you want to ask any questions or make any comments. So if there are no questions and no comments, I want to thank you for your time. We are right at our 2 o'clock. I did not want to keep you long, but I appreciate your taking the time to listen. I will be doing more of these and be getting more focused. So by all means, let me know what questions you have. We're going to dive deeper into the hormones and how to actually start to balance the hormones and how to support your cells so that they're not congested. So remember, if there is one cell that is congested, there are probably two cells that are congested. And if there's two, there's probably more. So I want you to be just think about those things and pick out your greatest stressor and see what kind of modifications you can make in your life that can help you to begin to minimize that stress and be able to start to be releasing waste. So thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.